Great. So I'm really excited now to be introducing our second panel named Ambitious Actions for a Green Recovery and NDC Enhancement. This second panel will reflect on 2020. We cannot leave that reality aside. In the face of the global health and economic crisis brought on by COVID-19, study after study have made clear that the only option for inclusive, sustainable recovery is one that puts climate action at its core, investing in resilience and emission reduction to drive innovation, growth, and job creation. We look now to our three panelists to highlight actions that can help ensure an inclusive and green recovery and ways to support governments to enhance their national economic contribution, as I expressed in the previous panel, what we call the activation of the ambition loop. So I'm really excited to introduce our three panelists, Mrs. MARCY Frost, Chief Executive Officer at CalPERS, Mr. AHMED, Chief Executive Officer at Artistic Milliners, and Mr. TORBEN PEDERSEN, Chief Executive Officer at PensionDanmark. First, let me welcome the three of you and thank you for being with us. I would like to ask you all to introduce yourself and tell us where are you joining from. So first, Mrs. MARCY Frost.
Good morning, at least good morning on where I'm at. I'm MARCY Frost, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the California Public Employees Retirement System.
And I believe that you're connecting from the West Coast.
I am connecting from Washington State.
Great, thank you. Thank you for being this early, MARCY. Mr. OMER AHMED.
Hi, thank you for having me on this panel. This is OMER AHMED. I'm Chief Executive at Artistic Milliners, and we are a denim manufacturing company based out of Pakistan.
Thank you. And Mr. TORBEN PEDERSEN.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to contribute to a very relevant and interesting discussion. My name is TORBEN PEDERSEN. I'm the CEO of PensionDanmark, located in Copenhagen, and I'm actually in my office right now. It's late afternoon in Denmark at the moment, so that's why it's a little dark behind me. And the nice red brick building you can see over my shoulder is actually the new headquarters of the Danish Central Bank. So we are located very close to big money. So we are really satisfied with this new location.
Thank you. Thank you all again for the effort on connecting in different time zones, and really great to have you all with us. Let's start with our discussion. My first question would be for the three of you. 2020 has been marked by COVID-19 pandemic, definitely. Can you tell us more about the impact that pandemic had on your institution or company? So first, MARCY.
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. When we think about the impacts of COVID-19, there are two that really have had more of a dramatic impact for us. And so the first one would be the portfolio impact itself. And then the second would be on our workforce, our employees, and getting everyone ready to work remotely, getting everyone out of the building and connected as promptly as we possibly could in order to keep productivity at the levels that we had prior to COVID. So on the portfolio side, we were pleased to be able to report in our fiscal year return that we were able to get a 4.7 out of the markets, which was a positive message that in an environment where many of our peers were really in that 3.1 to 3.2 benchmark range, to have CalPERS be able to accomplish a 4.7 and really taking advantage of some of the preliminary work that we had done around risk mitigation, drawdown risk, really advantaged the fund by about $11 billion. And then, we were able to also put together some strategies and opportunities that we saw in the market with the dislocation that was happening. We were able to put some money to work for the beneficiaries as well. So, overall, coming through the pandemic, the portfolio performed pretty well, even though it didn't hit our benchmark of 7%, our return target, which is unfortunate in that, sending this out to our public employers who pay for that unfunded liability side of the pension system, that is not, a positive message that we certainly wanted to get out, but a very positive message about what we were able to get out of the markets during those conditions. And then our employees are doing, they're just doing outstanding. Our customer service ratings remain extremely high. The team's morale remains high. We're working on, that future of the workforce around, how many of the employees will stay in a remote environment versus how many will come back on premise in a part-time capacity. But overall, a positive story, but certainly challenges remaining for both the portfolio and the workforce.
Thanks, Marcy. I can imagine how challenging and definitely what you have reflected have been part of our personal histories all around the world. Let me go now to OMER. OMER, please, can you tell us a little bit about the impact that the pandemic had on artistic millionaires?
Well, Gonzalo, the impact is we're still feeling that impact from an economic standpoint, and of course, from a workforce standpoint as well. Like Marcy mentioned, the safety of our workforce is our utmost priority, and remains that with the second wave pretty much in action. So we just trying to find new ways of working, and April, May have been extremely tough. Were extremely tough for us from a business standpoint as well. But we have seen a pretty decent recovery. You can call it pent-up demand. And now it's kind of tapering off, and business is getting a little more, it's just tapering down a bit. And so, things are still uncertain, but, we put some strategies in place, which we think will be important going into 2021. And one is, of course, digitization of business. A lot of functions, because, this is in the denim business, we never thought we could work digitally as effectively as we are now, because in denim, it's a touch feel business. And so in that sense, we have digitized because we've had to. And we've seen positive results in the sense that, of course, travel in our business is down by 90%, more than 90%. So, the carbon footprint is lower automatically by that. And also we have had, for some reason, we've been able to have more time speaking to our customers about things that matter. And sustainability is one of those things, and how we can cut down waste. We weren't having a lot of these discussions, let's say pre-pandemic. And so there's a lot more focus on macro numbers on sustainability. For instance, the energy mix that we're using, the water consumption, the natural resources and how we are using them. And of course, even from an ingredient mix, from a product mix, what we're using. So I think in the last 6 months, the biggest positive has been that we're having more meaningful conversations with our clients, which is helping us better align our corporate strategy. And of course, the biggest conversation through it all is our sustainable initiatives.
Brilliant. Thank you, Omer. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the work. Torben, would like to hear from you. What has been the impact of the pandemic at PensionDanmark?
Well, of course, the pandemic has been a hard strike for many of the members of our pension fund. We are a pension fund for blue-collar workers in Denmark. We have 750,000 members, and many of them have been locked down, have lost their jobs, which also means that their contributions to the pension plan has been somehow reduced. But luckily, because of the strong policy response from central bank and government, the effect on the, let's say, the overall macroeconomy has been limited, and some industries have been hit hard, restaurants, hotels, some service industries, but in general, for example, in the building and construction industry, where many of our members are employed, we have actually maintained a full level of activity during the crisis. In our company, we had to send people home and work from home in the spring, and now we are in the middle of, let's say, a soft lockdown, where approximately 50% of our workforce work from their private homes. But as we are a very digitalized company, we actually have been able to maintain full service level and full productivity in both the pension administration and in our investment business. So this has really, as OMER said, strengthens our belief in the need to have a strong and high level when it comes to use of digitalization in a financial company like ours. When it comes to the results on the, let's say, investment side, if you have asked me back in March, April, it looked quite dark, but because of the strong policy response, financial markets have recovered substantially, and as I think everybody knows. And actually, it now seems that we will end 2020 with a very attractive total return on our investments and our members' savings. And I think what is encouraging is the fact that if you look at stock markets, the companies who have performed best are those with a strong sustainability orientation bias. And I think that for the first time in 2020, we have seen a strong move among global investors, asset managers, towards to giving priority to sustainable companies. And as we have a strong exposure to this segment of the stock markets, we've actually benefited from it in this crisis year. So the savings of our members have performed very well, and we hope that they will be back in job when the effect of the stimuli packages run through the economy. And I must say I'm very proud of my staff, my team. They have performed really responsible, and although it has been challenging working from, let's say, your kitchen table instead of from your office, they have done it a great job. And that's one of the reasons that we actually on Friday at the so-called IPE Awards got the prestigious award as the best pension fund in Europe, which we are very proud of. And I have celebrated that in how you can do that now, but we have done that for all our employees on Friday. So we are very proud of this position.
Thank you. Thank you, Torben. If I can make a quick summary of these answers, I would say the three of you express how important it is to put people first, but I would say we have moved towards putting empathy first, right? Because adapting all of the not only the way to work, but also positioning the health of the people in the center has been probably one of the main learnings and lessons from this pandemic. So thanks for that. And I hear from each of you about tackling the opportunities at the same time. And I would like to move to that part of the equation, right? Starting with you, Marcy. As earlier this year, CalPERS released its first climate change risk assessment report, which found that 20% of its investment are in sectors vulnerable to climate change, including, of course, energy, forestry, transportation, food, and agriculture. How are you working with these companies to reduce the risk and hopefully to manage the opportunity that is reflected there?
Yeah, thank you. I would certainly start by saying that there are certainly risks associated with climate change, but we also believe that there are significant opportunities that we would be able to seize. So our climate strategy is really rooted in our fiduciary responsibility, and we like to add, an F into ESG, if you will, that there's a finance part to environmental, social, and governance issues as well. And CalPERS being able to accomplish its 7%, that finance part is extremely important, with 20% of the CalPERS real assets and private equity asset classes invested in climate solutions. So whether that's renewable energy as one example in real assets, or some of our GPs who are invested in more clean tech or clean energy. So we're really addressing both the risks and the opportunities through a three-pronged approach. The first one is engagement to ensure the companies where we're placing our capital or the capital of our beneficiaries that they bring down their greenhouse gas emissions. That's extremely important to the long-term risks associated with running a portfolio like CalPERS. As a matter of fact, we have identified climate risk as one of the top 3 risks associated to the portfolio over the long term. The second part of our strategy is around advocacy to support policy and regulatory frameworks that would be necessary, whether that's transparency and how companies are thinking about climate-related financial disclosures. The TCFD report, we did that on our own portfolio. Our result is, we're not satisfied with our result, but it certainly gives us a benchmark to work from. We want regulation that prices carbon. So we are engaged actively here in the United States with the SEC, both on carbon pricing as well as human capital metrics. And then integration is to bring consideration of climate change risk and opportunity into every decision that we make for the portfolio. So, the strategy around engagement is also based on partnerships that we have. We were a co-founder of Climate Action 100+, which now has a number of international as well as US plans. We are United Nations, the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance. I was very privileged and honored to be able to join that group. I just recently joined a council with the Vatican that is really focused as one of its components on climate change, another on human capital, board governance, which I think there's a high correlation between all 3 of those. And, the strategies, I think these strategies are gaining momentum. I think there is a lot more attention from shareholders. We don't necessarily have shareholders at CalPERS, but we have a number of very active and engaged stakeholders. So, Climate Action 100 is now has about 545 signatories with combined assets of just about $52 trillion. This is almost half of the world's managed money. So when Climate Action 100+ gets engaged, we are actually seeing quite a bit of success in those engagements with those companies on commitments to get to net zero by 2050. But we want to know what is happening in the intermediate. We can't just flip the switch for 2050. We want to know what you're doing in 2021, 2025, 2030. Are you transitioning appropriately? And how can we quicken that pace away from that 2050 and get it closer to the 2030, 2035 mark, which is really where the state of California has come out very clearly with Governor Gavin Newsom and stating that transition to a lower carbon economy in California needs to happen much sooner. So we think that these engagement platforms have tremendous opportunity, and we're looking forward to continuing that engagement. And again, as I mentioned, we did complete the TCFD report on our own portfolio. We have a benchmark against now where we can measure our strategies and how effective the engagement, the advocacy, and the investment decision processes are for CalPERS, and we'll be able to measure that over the long term. I would say we would do an updated TCFD report to the extent possible every 12 to 24 months just to see how we're making progress, creating our own scorecard as well.
Thank you, Marcy, and thank you also for setting the importance of the interim targets. I think that's really important to refer to. Now back to you, Omer. Artistic Milliners has committed to reach net zero emissions by 2050 through the business ambition for 1.5 of the UN Global Compact. You are officially a member of Race to Zero. Thank you and congrats for that. Can you please tell us more about your recent commitment that comes at a time when the world faces a global pandemic?
Yeah, again, the pandemic has made us take a step back and reassess our climate impact and what we need to do now to enable a cleaner future. And that's why when we found out about business ambition for 1.5, it resonated very well with our overarching climate strategy. And so through this public commitment, we will take more streamlined actions to minimize our carbon footprint throughout the value chain, and also lead by example, as we focus on a cleaner energy mix. For instance, 30% of our energy mix is already on solar, and we're planning to expand that. And it's and as you know that solar cost and renewable energy cost in general has been coming down quite significantly on a year-on-year basis. And so these projects are becoming much more feasible for us to implement. So that's why If you asked me a decade ago, 2050 would seem ambitious, but now with all these renewable energy initiatives, coming down in cost, it seems like it's possible. And if you look at wind farms and renewable energy in that sense is also coming down in cost. And Artistic Milliners actually owns a subsidiary by the name of Artistic Energy, which in the last 5 years has spent over $100 million on wind farms. And we are currently powering around 20,000 households in Pakistan with this wind energy. So in that sense, we are trying to do our part to offset our greenhouse gas emissions in our core business, which is the jeans business, by investing in other projects. And the government has been very supportive, on these sustainable initiatives, be it solar, be it wind. And most recently, we're also, investing and working on hydro energy. So we're basically using, these run-of-the-river sites up north of Pakistan, and so we're investing in that. Those projects will be ready in 5 years as well. So we're going to be adding another 100 megawatts to the grid in Pakistan of 100% renewable energy and 0% greenhouse gases. So we are very excited about that, and we're only pressing forward. And it's made us actually even more committed now, given the whole pandemic situation.
Thank you so much, Omer. Thank you for, as you said, leading by example, walking the talk, and really hoping that will inspire all of the various stakeholders with which you're working around setting and advancing the green economy in Pakistan. So really look forward to continue working with you towards COP26. Torben, the Danish pension funds have committed $50 billion for a green transition in Denmark. How have you worked with the Danish government to ensure a green recovery?
Yes, that's right. Last year in September, the Danish pension fund industry made a very strong pledge at the UN Climate Week in New York, saying that we, during the next decade, will increase our green investments with $50 billion US dollars, and we are accountable. So every year we are making a status saying how are we actually proceeding towards these targets. And I can tell you that in the first year we have actually managed to increase our total investments in this area with $7 billion US dollars. So we are ahead of the curve, so to say. And you're right, it is a way for us to support the very ambitious goals made by the Danish Parliament, saying that by 2030, Denmark has to reduce our total CO2 emissions with 70% compared with 1990. And in order to fulfill this really ambitious goal, we have to mobilize private funding at a very large scale. This is even more clear now than a year ago, because the consequences of the corona crisis is a very strong, let's say, pressure on the public finances. You have been using billions of dollars, euros to support the economy, which means that the investments necessary for the green transition must now, to an even larger scale, come from pension funds, other long-term investors. This is we have reconfirmed our pledge, and actually find it very comfortable, because in this low interest rate environment, all long-term investors are looking for alternative investments, just like MARCY from CalPERS told us before. And actually, in the area of green infrastructure, like wind farms, biomass power plants, and things like that, we find very attractive investment also from a purely return perspective. We started more than 10 years ago investing directly in renewable energy infrastructure in Denmark, then in Northern Europe. Then we moved to North America, and during the last 3 years we have moved to Asia, We're now involved in large offshore wind projects in Taiwan, Vietnam, Indonesia, Australia, and probably also during the next year in India. So we can actually combine our investment capacity with the experiences from the Danish green energy sector to provide the Asian countries with a fully financed, so to say, turnkey project approach, which has been very well received in these countries. We've done the same in our, let's say, real estate portfolio. As you all know, real estate is responsible for a very large part of the global CO2 emission. And by retrofitting existing real estate and by ensuring that the new investments in the real estate are at the highest possible level for climate impact, we can actually make a very strong contribution. And we are happy to say that the demand among tenants for sustainable buildings, both when it comes to housing and offices, are very strong. So this is another example of how to do good and do well at the same time. And as MARCY also mentioned, during the last couple of years, you've seen a very positive increase in the cooperation in the global institutional investor community. MARCY mentioned the Climate Action 100+. We are involved in the European branch. It's called IAGCC, Institutional Investors Group on Climate Change, where I took over the position as a vice chair last week. And we expect to do more in this area in the coming years in close cooperation with other long-term investors in order to help companies to transform their business models in a climate-friendly way by engaging also with, let's say, black companies and black industries and help them to become a part of the solution. So I think the prospects are actually very interesting. And as you need a green restart of the economies build back better, I think that investors like us have both opportunities and a great responsibility.
Thank you, Torben. I would like to ask each of you a final and quick question as we wrap up this second panel. The pandemic, as we have spoken, has affected us all, and would like to hear from each of you if you could share one step your company or organization has taken to ensure green recovery for others to follow. Just a very inspirational final word, and I will go the opposite way. So Torben, a very concrete and sharp answer to this question.
Well, yeah, I think that this is an area where you have a very interesting window of opportunity to combine our need for identifying new types of investments with our need to allocate substantial investments into the green transition. We are specialized in investment in green infrastructure assets like on and offshore wind farms. And I think that what we will see in 21 is the first floating offshore wind farms in Japan and in California, where we are very excited about the opportunities to invest in those type of facilities on deep sea levels. So when we meet next year, I probably will be able to show you a model of a floating offshore Californian wind farm close to MARCY's offices.
Thank you. OMER, what will be your answer to the question, the inspiration?
So we're taking a two-pronged approach, right? So one is the macro, in which we are determined to scaling up on the renewable energy that we use to power our equipment and machines. And from a product perspective, circularity. We want to close the loop. We want to cut down waste. We want to recycle, reuse, and reduce the natural resources we've been using so far. And this is really a passion right now in our company, as well as in the denim industry at large. This seems to be the main focus.
Thank you. And finally, MARCY, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as you know, as an asset owner, CalPERS, roughly $430 billion fund. The one concrete example I would give is that we've done the TCFD financial disclosure reporting on our own portfolio, and we're using that to actively and aggressively engage with the companies about how they will reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And whether that's through Climate Action 100 plus, whether that's through proxy, we're starting to see some great success. But I think the whole issues, all of the issues related to COVID, all of the issues related to, shareholder activism and this, much more apparent and educated group of people really thinking about the planet, thinking about people longer term. It gave us really more permission and authorization to move forward in a much more aggressive way. So we'll continue to match up the science and finance to do this, but we're seeing a good success from a number of companies making these commitments to us.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the three of you. I think that you have set very concrete opportunities for everybody, starting by acknowledging the size and the depth of the crisis that we're living nowadays, working around the possibility of building from the empty, possibilities and tools. So thank you for your great contributions to this conversation, and to all of the participants who have been engaging with us. We have heard from businesses and investors on the need to build on our achievements and scale up to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement, and that government's action through stimulus packages and NDC plays a crucial role in our efforts to reduce global emissions. This has been very clear. Now, before handing to Mr. Satya Tripathi for the third panel, I want to especially thank the UN Global Compact, their CEO, Sanda Oyambo, and her team for an amazing partnership with the Climate Action Champions since the beginning of the agenda back in 2015. And since last year, the business ambition for 1.5 has inspired and shine a light for many others to follow, as we have heard today. And this type of partnership and collaboration is setting the path towards a successful COP26 in Glasgow next year. I will now hand over to Mr. Satya Tripathi, UN Assistant Secretary General and Head of UN New York's office, for the third panel titled "For an Inclusive Multilateralism and Radical Collaboration to Implement the Paris Agreement." Thank you all. Really look forward to continue working with you towards a successful COP26 in Glasgow.
Thank you.